And on those items on which we don't have enough clarity yet, we'll make sure to keep you all in the loop as we move forward. I mean, it shows, by the way, that everyone is very much interested to find out what's going on moving forward. This is a very good turnout. So again, we hope that at least we are able to answer some of the questions you have. If not, we'll do our best to answer them at the end. So the topics that we're going to discuss tonight, in order of, we're just going to briefly touch on our spring 2020 season, albeit, slightly different from what we expected, or it was slightly different from what we expected. Just want to touch on that really quick. I'll try to inform you as best as I can on the return to play guidelines, as in, explain how we could potentially return to soccer in the weeks ahead, months ahead. We'll talk about the upcoming 2020 fall and 2021 spring seasons as well. We'll talk about the travel team formation process. We'll explain how it normally takes place and some of the changes that we are forced to make, sadly enough, this year as well. And then we'll finish with a Q&A. As you can see, this is our agenda. So Q&A will be at the end. And if you, throughout the presentation, find yourself having a question, just submit it to the chat. And we have our two VPs of travel with me who will pass questions on to me, or at the end, they may be able to answer it as well. All right, so it goes without saying, I think, and everyone used the word unprecedented, but we find ourselves in challenging times. Nobody could have imagined that we would have to go through what we went through the last couple of months. Unfortunately, that also impacted our ability to run the spring season as we had envisioned, which is frustrating. But we have done our best to engage our members as much as we can. All right. Sadly enough, the face-to-face contact, the going out on the field with your teammates and the trainer, playing the games, all those things were sadly lost on us. But we've done our best to make sure that all our players at least had something to look forward to in the weeks that we were away from the field, away from school, etc. And as we all had, it impacted us all greatly. But things are looking up, and hopefully it will continue to be on the up and move forward in a positive direction. So, as I said before, our efforts in the spring were really meant to engage anyone and everyone that felt there was a need to be engaged. Basically, if you were still interested in soccer, if you still wanted to go out there, we came up with a variety of means to provide all those players in our travel program currently with an opportunity to continue to enjoy the sport that they love so much. Granted, it wasn't how we envisioned it to be, but we basically learned on the fly. We've been using a variety of online platforms to stay in touch with, and overall, we've done all right. Again, considering the circumstances of everything, it wasn't bad. So we have done it through a variety of means. Virtual training, right? The last couple of weeks, I know the virtual training for all travel teams has ended by now, but that's also because the spring 2020 would have ended by now. Ended a couple of weeks ago for most teams, but our professional coaches would engage the players at least twice a week, virtual training, classroom sessions, etc. Sometimes a classroom session would be simply about just having the players engage with one another, because I know from speaking to my own team, and I've done virtual sessions and classroom sessions, for the last 2.5, 3 months almost. They appreciated that. Simply the fact that they were able to connect with the teammates, able to see them and speak to them, meant a lot to them. Again, it wasn't maybe what we had hoped it would be, but it filled a void. And as I said, provided training opportunities. And I've also found that by setting a set schedule where possible, it just provided a little bit of structure that a lot of the players, a lot of the children were missing the last couple of months. I saw it with my own kids. Things changed drastically, and school and soccer or whatever extracurricular activity you're in, they do provide some structure, and our kids tend to need a bit of structure, no matter in what kind of environment we are. So that was basically our spring 2020. Again, not what we expected, but we've made, in my opinion, the best of it. I do want to stress, and that's why we did the survey earlier on as well, that we do want to have your opinion. We value your opinion on everything we have done so far. And for those unaware, because the email may not have reached you yet, but we also will reach out, if again the emails haven't gone out yet, to all our teams through our professional coaches. And we basically want to ask our players, so not the parents, but our players directly, what they thought of the last couple of months, what they thought of the virtual training, what they're most excited about once we return, etc. All with the idea to find out, what worked well so far, what worked well, what didn't work so well, what do our players what did our players really miss the last couple of months? Do they have any suggestion on changes to be made? And again, we want to make sure that the players fill it out. I know some have already filled it out, and I can tell they're not necessarily filled out by players, but it's really a return to play survey for players. This is all in line with our philosophy that we want to create, or we always say we want to create a child-centered environment. We want to make sure we create an environment in which the children are central to all we do. And a lot of programs, a lot of sports, everyone mentions always that the children are central to all they do. However, no one ever asks the children for feedback, right? And we want to make sure that they're provided with an opportunity to provide us with their feedback on how everything went, what they're looking forward to, what they potentially want to see changed as we return to play. So once those emails come through, coming from your professional staff, assuming that you're from our professional staff, assuming you're in travel, make sure that you have your son or daughter fill it out. Obviously, you can look over the shoulder and help them out a bit, but we want their opinion to better run our programs, to make sure they cover the needs of the players in our program. All right, so that was spring 2020. All right, so return to play. Now, I'm sure that most, if not everyone on this call, on this webinar, part of this webinar, has heard that the governor stated on May 29th, that youth sports are allowed to return, but it needs to be through, in an environment where there's no contact. So that itself is an exciting development. That means that all we have done as, in New Jersey, as a society, have done over the last couple of months, what we have done has been paying off, because little by little we're starting to return to some form of normalcy again. Again, it will be different from what we're used to, but it's exciting. Now, we do need to stress, and I'll continue to explain why so, but it's not so much about the when for us as it is about the how. Because we want to make sure that when we return, we know exactly, and that's when I'm talking about the how, we want to know exactly what return to sports means. Right, before we commit to anything, we want to make sure that as we look to return, that we have all the information we have to make the best decision or decisions possible to prepare ourselves accordingly, and make sure that everyone else, our members, our professional coaches, administrators, everyone involved is well prepared. So we're not just focused on the when. We're not necessarily in a rush to return. We want to make sure we do it as good as possible, making sure that's an enjoyable environment, but also a safe environment for everyone involved. So on this topic, it needs to be stated that, and the governor mentioned that in his press briefing on the 29th. So if you have just seen the note coming by that youth sports are allowed to return, it doesn't provide you with any additional information. In the briefing, the governor mentioned that more information will come out before June 22nd, which will come through the Department of Health and Human Services, on how youth sports can effectively return. Now, this information has not come out yet. So we have information which is provided to us by New Jersey Youth Soccer, which is the governing body of youth soccer in New Jersey, and all our travel players are covered, for insurance through New Jersey Youth Soccer. That's every year we get players carded. New Jersey Youth Soccer has provided us with some preliminary guidelines, but these guidelines already worked out before the governor made the announcement on the 29th, and they do not necessarily align with the guidelines, the restrictions, if you will, that will come out hopefully in the days ahead through the actual state government. With that, we also need to keep in mind that the local government has its input, and they determine when fields open up, and potentially even how we go about returning to sports as well. So you have the state, we have the state government, we have the local government, and then for us, we also have New Jersey Youth Soccer, who determine whether or not we can return. Now, what I can do share with you at this point in time is that everyone is talking about the different phases as we return to. New Jersey Soccer, based on all the information that's out there at the moment, has worked out return to play notice / guidelines, although there are more recommendations at this point, and they have divided up in 5 phases. So the first phase we already went through. We're currently in the second phase, which means virtual training, as we have been doing. And we're providing a little bit more liberty as already as we move about. We're outside the house a bit more. We're allowed to gather in bigger groups. especially outside. We would be moving into phase 3. And right now we're trying to understand what moving into phase 3 means. Because some of the information that we currently have, not only talks about social distancing on and off the field, which means players are allowed to interact with each other, but they have to keep a distance, obviously. There's no contact, there's no 1v1, no 2v2, no scrimmaging whatsoever allowed in the training environment. But smaller groups. We, for example, also need to know, what other restrictions are in place. Do we need to wear protective gear? Are players supposed to wear gloves, masks, etc.? So those guidelines have not been confirmed yet, and we're waiting on more information. Right? Eventually, after phase 3, if everything goes well and we continue to go, in the right direction in New Jersey, then hopefully eventually we'll enter phase 4, which would be a phase in which we will be allowed to do more contact. So players off the field still have to social distance, but on the field, you're allowed to train in smaller groups, and you would be allowed to do 1v1, 2v2, 4v4, etc. Now, that in itself is really exciting, but again, we need to know more about the how to determine when we're going to return, if that all makes sense to everyone, right? And we hope, right, and I continue, and we continue as a club to, to look at the websites of the different governing bodies involved and the government itself, the state government that is. We're looking to find more information still to work out how we're going to proceed. Okay. Now, on this is basically what I just discussed. If you have any other questions about that, again, share and invite a chat. As I said, and I can't stress this enough, and this is not just my point of view, this is the club stance on it right now. We focus not just on when we return, but on how we will return as well. All right, because for us, the how is even more important. All right, the logistics need to be worked out. We got to focus on the safety and health of everyone involved, the liability of it all. I mean, we have to remember, and I can't stress that enough either, we do also need to stress that no matter how we return, that there will always be a risk involved. Everyone on this call and everyone else that, sadly enough, is not tuning in has to therefore decide for themselves whether they feel comfortable returning back to play. If we would do something over summer, if we return to some form of play in the summer, no one should feel any pressure to come back out to play, right? Just make sure we need to make sure that everyone understands that no one should be forced and will be forced to return to play. So, how is all this impacting our plans moving forward? Now, at the moment, right, we're basing our plans on the assumption that we can return to play. Now, given the information I just shared with you, it seems very likely, and that's a positive development, obviously, that by the fall we should be able to return to to sports where we're able to do things in-house, but maybe even play games again. Again, that's we're not committing to anything, because in the end that decision is not on us, but we're assuming that the fall will start and run as it always has done. However, right, we will make adjustments. We can make adjustments if and when needed. Right, so all what we're doing right now, the plans that we're putting in place right now are based on the assumption that everything will go according to. But we will, if we find we find ourselves being guided in a different direction, we'll make adjustments if needed. And again, that will be something we'll communicate with everyone involved at that point. Right, and again, this is not information that is not based on our own assumptions. This is all based on information, and I mentioned that before, but it's all based on information provided through state and local government. And again, our governing body of youth soccer in New Jersey, which is New Jersey Youth Soccer. All right, so this is where we are currently when looking at plans for the fall 2020 and the spring of 2021. The assumption is that we can return to play. We'll make adjustments if needed, and we'll communicate those changes. All is based on the information that we get our hands on, the guidance provided by state and local government and our governing body of youth soccer. So, travel team selection and the process of. So I'll explain to everyone how we always go through it, and I hope that for most that that this is a repeat of information. It's a refresher rather than it being a surprise to you that we've always gone about this way. But in short, we always strive for perfection. Now, we also know that as much as we strive for perfection, no matter how you go about this, a process as this, focused on team selection, will never be completely perfect. Now, adding to the mix, a pandemic, that makes it obviously more challenging, and we have found ourselves having to adjust to everything that's happening. So we have made some tweaks along the way already. And again, as I said, we strive for perfection, but it is an imperfect process no matter how you go about it. So we rely heavily on data that we gather through a variety of sources. Generally speaking, that is data that we get through a professional coach, a parent head coach, and depending on the age of the players, it would be either an age group academy, an evaluation festival, or even an open practice session. Now, I hope that you know what program your child would have gone through depending on their age. But again, that's 3 data points right then and there, assuming that the head coach is not your professional coach as well. If the head coach is your professional coach, then for that specific team, you may only have the 1 data point there. Now, this year, due to all this, we currently have only been able to collect the evaluations done by the professional coaches and the parent coaches. Okay, and I also need to stress that these evaluations done are not based on anything they've done in the spring, simply because we don't think it's fair to assess anyone based on what they have done in a live session. And for some, it may have been hard to commit to all these live sessions for whatever reason possible. The fact of the matter is, these live sessions, as much as they serve a need in a time of need, it limits you very much, because in the end, it was a player and his or her ball. And as much as that can show you some, it mostly will show you what a player is able to do on the ball, on the mend, in a structured environment. But it doesn't say anything about a player's ability to read the game, make decisions based upon what they have, just seen, and then execute that decision, which are the 3 pillars, I would say, of our player evaluations. Now, I'll share in a little bit. I'll click out of this presentation. I'll share an actual evaluation form with all you guys as well, so you know actually how we go about getting the data on our players. All right, so changes to the process are simply a necessity this year. So right now, we've gone through some of the steps that we've always taken. We've also waited a little longer with all this, given that we don't have all the answers yet, and there's still some uncertainty about our return to play. But at this point in time, first and foremost, we're trying to find out whether or not all our travel players currently in travel want to return next year, because this helps us determine what our needs are moving forward. And we have, I would say, almost finalized that process. If you have not yet filled out that survey that went out a couple of weeks ago already, please do so ASAP, because that alone already is so powerful for us to know. Like, it provides us with so much information, because then we can figure out what our needs are moving forward. Because if we say I'm just throwing something out there, we have a U9 age group, and a hypothetical scenario, although this has happened in the past, and we have 6 U9 travel boys teams, and we have 66 travel players, and only 59 of them want to return. We have at least an idea of what our needs will be moving forward, as in how many potential new players we may need. Okay, but that's where we are right now. Then based on that, we can also look at the data that we have to see if any gaps need to be filled within the program already. All right, so that's where we are currently. All right, so we're saying this right now as in that it doesn't look likely that we'll be running any form of tryouts, which impacts the process. But again, it depends on how things evolve the next couple of weeks, and also it's based on the guidance that we get as we move forward. All right. Now, what I'll do really quick, and bear with me, I'm gonna do a new share with you, right, and quickly show you the evaluation forms that we've used. Now, this is a mock evaluation that I filled out actually a year or 2 ago already, and anyone that is into the Premier League and a big fan of Manchester United either likes this one or takes offense to the evaluation I filled out. But what I do want to stress for everyone is that we base our evaluations on a couple of items. So scores are provided on, and I'm just going from top to the bottom, communication, which is basically an understanding of tactics. All right, and again, also related to one's age, because a U9 player has a slightly different understanding of the game than a U13, U14 player. A U13, U14 player is just further in his or her development. Their brain is also further development, Prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed for a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old player, for example, which impacts greatly how they perceive what happens around them. Right, so it's tactics, then game insight, which then impacts your decisions. All right, so again, it's understanding of tactics, principles of play, if you will, your ability to read the game and act accordingly, decision making. All right, and then the execution of your decisions, which is technique. And without the first two, you don't have the last. And this is why I stated before as well. We can't rely on information that we get from players based on just virtual sessions. So we don't use the virtual sessions as a means to evaluate players. Right? I can't stress that enough, because just technique alone doesn't say anything about one's ability to play the game. And the last one that we have included is commitment. And when we say commitment, it covers quite a few things. Obviously, attendance overall, but also once you're in a session, how do you participate? What is your effort like? How is your attitude towards practice? Do you work harder in practice versus games or vice versa? These are all things really important to know. And then, again, based on one's age level, we score them from 1 through 4. So as you can tell, we have 4 categories in which every player will be scored from 1 through 4. Okay, and if you look at this over here, you'll see that it gives you 4 scores and a cumulative, all right, for each and every team. Now, anyone that's wondering why we don't have anything on the physical ability of players in here is simply because we want to avoid scenarios in which players are selected based on their size, because that may just be because someone is an early developer and may not actually be, whether it's great on the ball or struggles to read the game. We want to find those players that understand. We want to evaluate players based on their ability to read the game and act accordingly, and therefore also act based on what they have seen, versus someone that runs fast or can kick the ball hard, right? Because again, early developers may be successful depending on how you define success, but they may be able to overpower their peers simply because they're ahead of them physically, but that over time will even out. We want to make sure that all players are evaluated on the same criteria and criteria that they all have control of. And in essence, it's not about physical speed, it's about speed of thought. All right. Some of the best players in the world aren't strong, aren't necessarily fast, but they can read the game accordingly, are in the right place at the right time before anyone else. A better example would be, do you start running before the ball is played? As in, you read the game well and you see the opportunity, so you can receive the pass at the right time, at the right moment, in the right spot? Or are you running after the ball is played? Which means more often that you rely just on your speed alone to get somewhere. Okay? Now, again, this is why we go about evaluating the players the way we do currently. Now, a couple other items that need to be added or explained. So we have a goalkeeper rank, which, by the way, at a younger age, we don't pay too much attention to, because at U9, U10, all players play in the goal. Even at U11, U12, there's still many players that play in the goal. And we don't move players from team to team based on just their goalkeeping ability or goalkeeper ability as in shot blocker, stopping shots. Right? We actually want to develop goal players, which are players who aren't just there to stop the shots, but are also, basically like our first attacker in possession of the ball, always an outlet, comfortable receiving the ball back, comfortable receiving and passing the ball under pressure, etc. The second to last column over here talks about a recommendation provided by a coach, right? And this is based on his or her observations over the course of. Now, this is mostly based on fall and winter at the moment. And then we also asked them to provide comments. Again, this is a mock evaluation, all right? But it tells you, what certain players are about. So, for example, Ander Herrera here has a decent score overall. It says, for example, over here, very reliable, and in my humble opinion, is a bit of a diver. But these are general comments, and they can be very helpful. Now, across all the evaluations and the information we get, we look for trends. For example, if a professional and a head coach both recommend as a player to be promoted, there may be some truth to, what they're sharing with us, and we may have to look into the possibility of that player moving up a team. Okay. Normally, we also include data from an academy, as I said, or an evaluation festival, or an open practice session, if applicable. But sadly enough, this year we don't have that information yet. Right, so let me go back to the extra presentation. So this is basically where we are when it comes to the travel team selection process. So I'll go through this one more time. So this is where we are currently. And again, if any changes will be made or need to be made, we'll communicate that with everyone. So the weeks ahead and what to expect from us, right? And to be honest, there are also some expectations placed upon you, right? Because it's really important that we will do our best to provide you with updates, and we do that through a variety of means. So obviously we have our computer system, our registration system, demonstrate our website, and we use that to send out invites even for this town hall, for example. I hope you received the invite. If you haven't received an invite, that may well be because you have opted out of receiving our notes. Right now, if you do so, the consequence is that you may not get all the information you need to have. But again, we'll do our best to communicate with everyone involved on how we're going to move forward. All right. And as much as there's still uncertainty and we find ourselves in uncertain times, we do our best to provide you with as much clarity as we possibly can. Okay. And again, hence the reason that we're doing this town hall as well, because I know there's a lot of people waiting to find out how we're going to return, when we're going to return, how travel team selection is going to work out, etc. Look out for emails. We use our website. We try to update our website. We use social media. Please, on your end, take that responsibility upon you as well to make it a two-way street, to make it easier for all of us involved. Again, we do our best to make it as easy to understand for all involved. It just helps if everyone on the receiving end is also involved enough to check for the information that we share with all you guys. All right. And know that you can always reach out to us with any questions. All right. I'm here to help. Our VPs of travel are here to help, and I'll share our information in a slide coming up as well, so you have it. Our objective will continue to be to provide you with clear and timely communication. Right. If you answer emails or fill out surveys accordingly as well, or reply on a note when necessary. If you do that in a timely manner, it will help streamline the process, which is challenging to begin with and has become more challenging in these uncertain times. Right? And I can't stress it enough. We are here to help. Hopefully you can also help us help you. All right. Again, hopefully you can also help us help you and your son or daughter or multiple children if you have multiple. So for those that want to write this down, I'll keep this up really quick. So again, Eric Judka is our VP of Girls Travel Soccer, effective June 1st, which in effect meant that Matt Farenbach moved over to the boys site. And their email addresses are shown over here. And then on the bottom is also my email address in case you want to reach out to me as well. Right, so just keep in mind, Eric Judka, VP of Girls Travel Soccer, Matt Farenbach, VP of Boys Travel Soccer, and I am the Director of Coaching, and I'm involved in the entire process as well. All right. So in short, all right, we already along the a couple steps in the process, or we've made a couple steps in the process of selecting our teams for next year. We have to sidestep here and there because we're missing some information or we're unable to get us some information currently. But at least we have figured out the need, as in who wants to return, who doesn't want to return. All right. Then we also have collected the data that can help us determine if there are gaps on teams, how we can potentially move players up. And this with all that will also tell us how many spots we have potentially to fill. And that may then mean that we, in the weeks ahead, have to look at everyone that was interested coming out of, say, Reckon in the county, how we could potentially include them. Now that may mean that we have to, in the foreseeable future, schedule some kind of practice session to at least see what they're about, to make sure they fit the team in the travel program. We'll have figured it out. Now, in regards to return to play guidelines that I discussed earlier, yes, June 22nd we're allowed to start, but again, youth soccer starting on the 22nd of June looks a lot different from what we're all accustomed to. All right, and again, we're not so focused on the when per se, we're more focused on the how. Until we get more guidance from state and local government, right, it will be very challenging for us to be more exact, to tell you exactly how we're going to move forward. All right, so we do our best to keep you in the loop. I sent out a note last week on this specifically as well. that there are certain restrictions in place, there are recommendations being made, but we want to make sure that we have all the information to make the best decision possible. With that, no one will be pressured to return to play. All right, no one should feel any pressure to return to play. All right, that decision is on you, on the family. All right, we want to make sure you're comfortable with. Just recognizing that, whatever we do, there will always be a risk involved, given the situation we find ourselves in. Then in terms of the team selection itself and how we go about it, I hope the evaluation form that I showed everyone also provide you with more clarity on how we at least gather data on our players, and that we really focus on one's understanding of the game, the ability to read the game, speed of thought versus physical speed, for example. We want to help players become better soccer players, better decision makers. So we don't focus too much on the physical ability of a player, because then we would only find the early developers, and we may exclude some players who are just developing a little later. Eric, how are we doing on questions? I think it's time. I think I summarized everything quite well. How are we doing on questions, and what questions have come up that either I or you or Matt can answer, hopefully?
Yep. And the first question has come in multiple different forms, but the crux of the question is, if a player was not currently on a WSA travel team, if they were a rec player, if they were an inter-county player, or if they had signed up for the evaluation festivals, which obviously did not happen, how will they be evaluated, and how will they be able to be considered for a travel team?
All right, so I hope I addressed it before, but I can understand the question still comes up though. So we're currently finding out what our needs are, and that's something we've always had to do, no matter if we're in a pandemic or not. We always have to find out what our needs were, as who is returning, right? And based on that, we know how many open spots we potentially have. Now, we already have most of the information, not all, by the way, because not everyone in travel currently has filled out the travel survey, by the way. Then those that have registered for an age group academy, an evaluation festival, or even an open practice session, we have them on a list. And as soon as we have a better idea when we could potentially run some kind of session in which we can at least see a bit more from them, all right, we will set something up so that they can be seen. Now, that won't be effective June 22nd. I can guarantee you that already. This may not be till mid-July, maybe a little later. Okay, it may be in August. We don't know that yet. But again, it also depends on the needs. Right? But we will stay in touch with everyone and anyone that has registered as a rec and or in accounting player that has shown interest in travel. And if we find an opportunity to evaluate them, we will do so. Right? That doesn't answer all the questions. I know there's still some uncertainty there, but certainly enough on our end, there's some uncertainty as well. And we had the best thing I can say, we try to control all that is within our control at this point in time.
So, and just to that end, Ruben, I will chime in that over the past couple of weeks, we have sent out multiple different emails, some of them with Google survey links, just requesting that if you are interested in returning to WSA travel, that you just fill out the form and that you inform us that your player is interested in coming back. We've sent out a follow-up, and we'll probably, I think after this, just resend that out in some capacity, and also reach out to team managers. But I would just ask that if you don't recall that you filled that out, to please go back in, check your email. The survey is still open. We'd really like to get 100% response rate. It'll help us understand who is interested in coming back, but at the same time, it'll also help us understand the number of spaces that we do have available for those rec players, for those inter-county players that had signed up that were interested as well.
Thank you, Eric.
Yep. I'm just coming to look at the last, the one before that. Hold on. Okay. Let's see. Current travel players do not need to sign up to be considered for 2021. As long as you completed the survey correct, that'll help us understand and know that your player is interested in returning. So thank you very much for that.
While you're looking, Eric, I got one that was just looking for a little bit of clarification on, I guess, the reason that The virtual practices may not have been part of the evaluation or the evaluation process for travel formation this year.
Okay, I'll take that one. So as I, first and foremost, from the start, all right, we have said, and when I said the start, with the start of the at-home, the stay-at-home order, right? We didn't know from family to family how each and every family was impacted. So, you know, kids had to be homeschooled. If you have multiple kids in the house, it can be challenging. Both parents may be working from home. So there's quite a few moving pieces to deal with there. Everyone's life was, you know, to a certain degree being thrown upside down. So some people may have had a hard time committing to these sessions. Some kids may not have tuned in for every session for these reasons mentioned. As I stated before, a technical session doesn't give us an awful lot of information on a player's ability to read the game and act accordingly. All we've seen out of the three pillars I discussed earlier was one's technique. Okay, combine that with the fact that, you know, soccer is a team sport. In a team sport, you play with and against others. You interact with your teammates, your coach, etc. There's a lot of worthwhile information that we're just not getting from a virtual session. All we get from a virtual session is, hey, this is the move I need you to make. Can you make the move? And that's just, you know, a very simple example, but that's what it is. So you're basically doing tricks on demand, right? Now that's kind of, you know, for lack of a better comparison, is a circus act, if you will. That doesn't say anything about your ability as a player, again, to, you know, understand the game, read the game, you know, scan your surroundings, make a decision based upon it. All we've seen was the execution. But the execution in the game technique is based on all these other factors. So again, this is why we don't want to base it on spring alone. We're looking at what happened in the fall, what we've seen in the winter, what we know of our players as soccer players. Thanks, Matt.
And just to respond, that is correct that inter-county players did not receive the initial survey. The survey was sent out just to those that are registered or that were on a WSA travel team, because we do want to understand the numbers that we have returning to each of these teams. And then for those that have registered for the travel tryouts, the evaluation festival, we are capturing you that way. So if you were an inter-county player that signed up for the evaluation festival, we have your information and you're not kind of floating out in the interwebs. We do have you recorded down and as part of a separate list, just not that travel list that the survey was sent out to. Ruben, I know we can touch base on this for a very quick moment. We do have a couple of parents that are on that have rising U9 players.
Okay.
I know have had the separate call, but if you just want to take a moment just to very quickly address that, so that way we can just provide that little bit of information.
Yeah, so on our incoming U9s, we don't have any information, as in the kids born in 2012. Correct me, Eric, if I'm wrong on that. 2012,
correct.
Right?
Those that were registered for the U8 Academy.
Yes. So we don't have any information on them. So there's no way to gather data and plan accordingly. So the only way we're going to find out what players are about is through some form of academy. Now, given the times that we're in and, you know, that we haven't even returned to play yet, we don't know exactly when and how we will do that. But, you know, we have different scenarios in mind, depending on when we can return to play. And obviously, in such a manner that we can assess and evaluate players accordingly as well. Now, as part of that, we really firmly asked all the players that were registered for 2012 U8 Academy to let us know if they still wanted to be considered for U9 travel come the fall, to ensure that those that were interested and are still interested will continue to receive any updates we have. And if you didn't fill out that survey, the assumption by now is that one is not interested to be considered. Because again, you have to go through the U8 Academy to be considered for U9 travel, but some people go through the U8 Academy but don't want to be considered for U9 travel for a variety of reasons, right? And we respect the decision, but we want to make sure that we capture all those people, all those players that want to be considered for U9 travel still. So we have plans in place, or plans in mind is a better way of expressing it, I think, sharing it. But it depends on how we move forward as we return to play.
And just for those parents that are parents of the U8 Academy, the Rising U9, similarly, we did send out, we had the town hall a couple of weeks ago, And post the town hall, we did have a survey that went out just to understand interest level coming out of that survey. If you are a U8 rising U9 parent and you did not complete that survey, please reach out to either myself or Matt Farenbach, as the survey itself has closed. But if you have interest, we will put your names down on the list. Just that survey itself has already closed down, so you could reach out to us directly.
Email addresses are once again shown on the screen, by the way, for clarity.
And Coach Ruben, we have another question, a general question in the sense that wondering if teams are changing for next year, and if so, when will we know the team assignment? There also was a second question about when will teams be announced. But I think this, I don't think anything about the evaluation itself is different necessarily, in that we always evaluate teams after each season in order to determine the appropriate placements for players. So I'll let you take it from there.
So I explained the steps that we've gone through and that we've already collected data. So from a professional coach to head coach, that is the data we're going to use moving forward. All right. Combined with the information that we have received on players that want to return next year, because if someone doesn't want to return and made that clear to us, we're just excluding them from the process. And based on that, we have to look at how many players are returning and how many teams we're going to still able to form, what our needs potential will be. I mentioned that earlier as well. Combine that with the fact that it all depends on the format in which they'll be playing. Because, for example, U10 teams now play 7-a-side, but we're moving into U11 where they play 9v9. U12 teams were scheduled to play 9v9 this spring. We'll be moving into 11-a-side. So that will also impact roster sizes. So based on the number of players that have expressed that they want to return, we'll look at how many we have, how big rosters need to be give and take, and what we'll have at that point in time. And then we may have to make movement, obviously, but if extend rosters, generally speaking, the movement is mostly upward. Again, I don't want to commit to anything at this point. However, that seems the most likely process, because a typical U10 team has 10, 11 players, and a U11 team, U12 team has about 12 to 13 players. So you can tell already, based on those numbers alone, that the roster slightly increase, which can open up more spots potentially. Any other questions, Eric?
Yep, I'm scrolling through to see if I missed anything, but at this point, I don't believe that there's anything. Again, for those that may just be on a phone and not on the Zoom directly, if you did want to send a question in, wsaejj@gmail.com. I'm monitoring that right now, and we can answer your question. Also, if there's anything in the chat. Ruben, another question, a couple of times that this has been posed. If we have a firm date as to when we're going to announce the teams, I know you had kind of touched on that earlier about the process that we're undergoing currently.
So we're already in the process of, we haven't set a hard date for ourselves to announce the teams. We're hoping to do it rather sooner than later, but we also recognize that on our end, there's some flexibility needed, because we may not have all the information we need to move forward. One of these pieces is simply whether or not players actually want to play next year, because we still had a decent percentage of people not getting back to us. That's one. And then we may have a need still, and based on need, we may not be able to confirm a team yet. But we will continue to update everyone, as stated before, via the platforms we have available to keep everyone in the loop. All right.
Perfect. I'm going back through, and at this moment, I don't see any more. I'm just going to check the email. And again, for those that were part of the U8 Rising U9s, we did send out a survey post the town hall. So if you have an interest in doing that and having your player considered that you did not fill out the survey, please send a note either to myself or Matt Farenbach, and we can make sure your player is added to the list. Same thing with those that are here currently with players that were currently part of WSA travel teams. Please check your inbox. There have been survey links sent out, and this will help us expedite the process of forming our teams. Ruben, one question with regards to If there is movement up, down from teams, is that largely based on just team size and either people leaving a team or teams getting larger, or is this leveraging any of the evaluations, basically? So how is that factored in?
Now, I will be really hard for us at the moment to move players down, because none of the players have been given an opportunity to express themselves, to show themselves, to showcase themselves in the environment in which they're normally evaluated, assessed. So movement will be based on the needs, the increase of roster size potentially, which is mostly due to, again, the current situation we find ourselves in. So again, if you are a parent and you find your kid is asked to move down, even though he or she had not had an entire spring season, you probably wouldn't feel that would be a fair thing on your child. And we look at it that same way as well.
Ruben, for those that played inter-county, that played rec, or maybe were just part of futsal in the winter, is there any opportunity for us to obtain any feedback from any of the coaches there?
So say that again on the players.
So for those players that have only played either inter-county, have only played rec, or have played futsal, but were registered for an evaluation festival, is there an opportunity to obtain and solicit feedback from coaches?
That will be challenging, simply for the fact that none of the coaches were asked at the time to fully to fully assess and evaluate players. They may have their thoughts on them, but now to have to go back and provide information on someone they worked with, say 5-6 months ago, may not provide us with all the details. And that's just assuming it's a winter program. I'm not even talking about a fall season. That's more than 7-8 months ago. So that will be very challenging to do.
Great. In areas where you may have team size increasing, so from U12 to U13, depending on the size of the team. So if there's a team size, so if you're going from 7v7, 9v9, 9v9 to 11v11, and the team size increases, and there may be limited number of teams, do we have any idea of how we would anticipate what we would do for those teams where numbers then may fall short as a result?
So that heavily depends on how many we still need. I mean, if we need to find more than half a team, we may not be able to form a team. That's so simple. That's because we haven't had the opportunity to run any tryouts, evaluation festivals, etc. Now we know of some players that may be interested in joining, but if it's only a few players, we'll do our best and extend ourselves to get those players. But for example, for an 11-a-side team, at a minimum, you're probably going to need at least 16 players. Now, if you only have about 8, that's just not sufficient, and you're not going to find 8 players suddenly to form a team.
And obviously, that's something that is going to be handled on an age group by age group, team by team basis. And again, it really helps us to understand, again, the broader picture if everybody, and we have 100% completion rate with regards to those surveys. So we know who is interested in coming back, and helps us then know from the standpoint of those that have registered for the evaluation festival from inter-county, from rec, it helps us understand if there is a need right away for those players to be slotted into a team because of shortfall on numbers.
Any other questions, Mr. Judka?
Check the email inbox. Nothing right now. Nope, I believe we'll give another moment for anyone that has any questions. We'll just solicit one more time. Again, on the screen are both my emails, Matt's email, and also Ruben's email. And please, either during this call or when the call ends, please feel free to send a note to the appropriate contact, and we can do our best to answer the questions and get back to you with as much information as possible.
All right.
At this time, Ruben, I have not seen any additional questions come
Okay.
through.
All right. Then I want to thank everyone for tuning. Oh, did you say
I've
another
got
question?
one. Let's see. Could you let the parent coaches know who or how many people tonight? Yep. So with regards to that, both Matt and myself are going through the survey responses, and we're basically understanding who has responded and who has not. In some cases, we've reached out to the team managers. In other cases, we're going to reach out to players, parents directly in order to get as close to 100% response rate as possible. So again, we will ask you to go back to your email, check the email. Matt, can you confirm, did it come from Westfield Soccer Association, the survey that was sent?
Yeah, I believe it came from the WSA-administrator email
Okay,
address.
so you filter through your emails and go back to one of the last ones that was sent. This will help you find that, and you can just go in. If you've already filled it out, it won't let you fill it out a second time. And if for some reason you do have multiple players within WSA travel teams, please reach out as well, because the form will probably, unless you use a different browser, only let you fill it out one time. So if that does apply to you, please let us know, and we could add in your additional player.
All right. So I don't want to take any more precious time from all those that tuned in tonight. I appreciate you actually making yourself available to come online and listen to us. I hope we were able to provide you at least with some clarity. As stated before, in these uncertain times, we will, in the meantime, continue to work out how we're going to proceed. We'll make sure to keep everyone in the loop. If at any point you have any questions, please reach out. If we reach out, hopefully everyone can also make sure that they go through the information accordingly. That way, as I said, we can all go through this process, make it as easy for everyone involved, because it is always a challenging process. Throw in a bit of a pandemic, it becomes a little more challenging. But we're going to continue to make our best efforts, to give our best efforts to complete this in the best possible manner. All right, Eric, Matt, anything to add before we finish this off?
No, great job. Thank you, everyone,
I will
for coming out.
just say thank you very much to everybody that joined tonight. We did have over 100. I know there was some technical challenge for some in getting into the call, but we had over 100 attendees, which from a standpoint of attendance is great attendance. We did record this session. We'll be putting it up on our YouTube channel, and then putting a link to it on our social media in case anybody does have any desire to re-listen to that, or in case they know of anyone that wasn't able to get onto it. And I would just thank you all for your time and commitment with regards to youth soccer. I mean, we're all here because we love the game and we love to be able to provide this for the players. And so we thank you for all of your efforts, for all of your feedback. And there's always an opportunity if anyone is interested in getting involved more in volunteering. Again, please reach out to Matt, myself, or Ruben, and we always welcome. This is a volunteer-run organization, so we definitely appreciate any and all help.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Thank you,
Matt,
Matt.
Ruben,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.